indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Establishing operating budgets, one for the town and one each for the sewer department, water department, and recreational department. The last meeting we took the sewer, water, and recreation first. Today, just to hopefully get those completed. So we have ordinance 1015, an ordinance establishing the sewer department budget for the fiscal year 2010-2011. Presented by myself on behalf of the administration. Prior year is $1,108,020. Proposed. Am I supposed to use the mayor's proposed figure or the council adopted budget figure? Mr. Warner.
Council adopted budget.
Please. The proposed budget for 2010-11 is $1,154,243. Expenses, $1,108,20 for the prior year. Proposed $1,154,243. Contribution from the general fund, 0910, $94,820, 1011, 0. Does anyone wish to speak on the sewer department budget? Very well. Councilor Kirkpatrick. First vote.
Mr. President, I make a motion that we accept the sewer fund budget as presented.
Councilor Kirkpatrick moves passage of ordinance 1015. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Dwyer. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Councilor Kirkpatrick.
Yes.
Councilor Morris.
Yes.
Councilor Lemoyne.
Yes.
Councilor Ackerman.
Yes.
Councilor Dwyer.
Yes.
The chair votes yes. The ordinance passes on the first vote, 6-0. Next item is ordinance 1016. An ordinance establishing the water department budget for the fiscal year 2010-2011, presented by myself on behalf of the administration. First item is enterprise fund revenue. Prior year figure is $5,854,428. Proposed is $5,972,203. Expenditures, $5,854,428. Proposed, $5,972,203. Over, under, 0 and 0. Does anyone wish to speak on the water department budget? Councilor Kirkpatrick.
Make a motion to approve the water enterprise fund budget as presented.
Councilor Kirkpatrick moves passage of ordinance 1016. Seconded by Councilor Dwyer. Discussion. Hearing none, roll call vote. Councilor Kirkpatrick.
Yes.
Councilor Morris.
Yes.
Councilor Lemoyne.
Yes.
Councilor Ackerman.
Yes.
Councilor Dwyer.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. The ordinance passes on the first vote, 6-0. Ordinance 1017, an ordinance establishing the recreation department budget for the fiscal year 2010-2011. We have the enterprise fund revenue. Prior year, $72,500. Proposed, $72,500. And expenditures, $72,500, $72,500. No over and under. Does anyone wish to speak on the recreational department enterprise budget? Hearing none, Councilor Kirkpatrick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I make a motion we accept the recreation enterprise fund budget as presented.
Councilor Kirkpatrick moves passage of ordinance 1017, seconded by Councilor Dwyer. Is there any further discussion? Roll call vote, Counsel Kirkpatrick.
Yes.
Counsel Morris.
Yes.
Counsel Lemoy.
Yes.
Counsel Ackerman.
Yes.
Counsel Dwyer.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, the ordinance passes on first vote, 6-0. Now we have ordinance 1014, an ordinance establishing the operating budget for the town for the fiscal year 2010-2011, presented by myself on behalf of the administration. As in prior years, our procedure will be as follows. We will take each section of the budget, review each line, and then take any questions. Once the questioning is completed on that particular section, we'll move on to the next one. So we have the first category under revenue, which is general revenue, which consists of the following. Property taxes, prior year, $50,879,409, proposed $55,751,353. Licenses, permits, and fees, prior year $1,021,819, proposed $951,847. Rescue revenue, prior year $550,000, proposed $580,000. Probate fees, prior year $30,000, proposed $30,000. Municipal court, prior year $85,000, prior year proposed $30,000. This is revenue. Interest on taxes, prior year $285,000, proposed $215,000. Investment income, prior year $100,000, proposed $60,000. Miscellaneous, prior year $751,500, proposed $862,500. Water fund services, prior year $70,000, proposed $70,000. Sewer fund services, prior year $30,000, proposed $30,000. Interfund tax interest, prior year $60,000, proposed $60,000. Appropriation from impact fees, prior year $160,000, proposed $0. Proceeds on land sale, $0 and $0. Appropriation from vehicle reserve surplus, prior year $226,000, proposed $0. Appropriation from general fund surplus, prior year $312,099, proposed $0. Total general revenue, prior year $54,560,827, proposed $58,640,700. Does anyone want to speak on general revenue? Come forward, please. Please identify yourself.
Thank you, Mr. President. Jeff Mutter, 1515 Kent Street. I'm just requesting a levy worksheet that reveals I didn't bring my glasses up, but that justifies that 55 and change number and what the first quarter collection percentage was unaudited for this year. Thank you.
Do we have the levy worksheet? I know we mentioned that at the last meeting, Mr. Warner.
I wasn't aware that was needed, but I'll have that for Thursday night.
I brought it up at the last meeting, I believe. I don't know what the result was of that.
I might have been confused about, I think the one you're talking about for the total revenues requires estimates as to what the assessment will be at 12/31/10. So it's, it's just an estimation, but I'll gladly work that up for you.
Well, as to the question of school committeeman Mutter, hard to break old habits. He wanted to know what the percentage of the tax rate is that you're using to establish this figure. Collection rate, I'm sorry.
As of today, 33% of the motor vehicle levy's been collected.
No, he's asking what number you use. Counselor, Ms. Mutter, you repeat the question so I don't misrepresent.
We use 44% for the real estate in this budget,
44?
for the real estate, and for the motor vehicles, we use 41%.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So funding this year's, under the property tax, the percentage, that collection rate that you're using is 44%? What was it for the May, do you know what it was for the May bill that just went out, what that collection was?
Today, I don't have it broken down, but what was the first? Well, this is going to be, there's going to be some blending, there'll be some second quarter payments in here, as well as 100%, the people paid everything in full. But as of today, we've collected 46.5% of the real estate and the tangible taxes combined, and 33% of the motor vehicle.
Councilor Moore?
Last year was 43.
No, but, thank you. But so you've collected 46.5% of the levy in the first quarter collection?
No, that's as of today.
No, okay, as of today, do you anticipate that to get higher?
No, it would be lower, because as I said, in this 46.5%, there's some second quarter payments in here that
There's some,
are due at the end of this month, but
there'd be some people that paid the entire bill for the year. Is that-
yeah, if they paid it before June 30th, it counts for last year's revenue.
Really?
Yes.
So, we don't have, so what's our best guess or as to how much of it was collected in the first quarter? The reason I ask that, obviously, is that that's a vitally important number, as you are aware, and you have to use the next year, when you go to set the levy, unless you change the ordinance, you're going to have to use a number that's no greater than 1% less than that. So that's why it's important, and if, obviously, this isn't anything new. I've been a stickler on this number since the beginning of time, so I'm just wondering what it was. If it obviously was 45%, then you have an ability to use 44% in this year's budget, but if it was only 43.5%, you can't use 44% in this budget, unless you want to change the ordinance.
You say 1%.
Less. So if you couldn't use a higher number, unless you wanted to go back and change the legislation.
But it
But
has to be the same number or 1%
we
less?
have historically used no more than 1% less, actually. But the wording is a little bit ambiguous, so you could, what is the unaudited number on that collection rate? I mean, it's just an important number. And obviously, to validate the 55, 751, 353 number, I think you need to know it. Thank you.
Do you have a levy sheet, prepared, Mr. Warner, that you could access if we took a break?
I have the actual levy sheet
For this budget, for the proposed budget?
for the levy that just went out. I don't have the mixed levy sheet that you're talking about that comes to the $55 million number, because that's 45% of the levy that just ended, approximately, and about 55% of the levy that you're going to propose next April, based on the 12/31/2010 assessment numbers that we don't have. So I can create a sheet that'll balance it, but understand it's not hard facts, it's just
Well, you
numbers.
understand that, it's never hard facts until April next year.
I'll do that. I apologize, I wasn't aware that that was a requirement.
Councilor Kirkpatrick?
Steve, is there a way you can put that together now if we were to take a break?
No.
Anybody else? Mr. Landy?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have basically the same question as Mr. Mutter. Town Council, I think really you need to get your arms around this, because we're asking the taxpayers for a 10% increase, $5 million over $50 million. We're asking our taxpayers for a 10% increase, but we don't understand at this meeting right now what that truly represents. And that's that's clear, and I understand that that levy worksheet will help us break that down a little better. But the last time we got together,
Before you proceed to the next question, I believe we answered the question previously. It's not a 10% proposed increase, Mayor.
well, that is my question, because I wanted to reiterate the breakdown of the $5 million increase, which is along the lines of Mr. Mutter's question also.
Yeah, and I think that we can break that down. I mean, I don't think there's a mystery in terms of where the number came from, and when you do the budget and submit the budget on the normal circumstances, is to do the first week of May. Literally, at the same time, the tax bill that you're trying to estimate what the collection rate is going to be. So you're taking it from a historical perspective, and that's what Steve just answered in terms of the percentage that he, calculated on. But the $5 million or $4.8 million, a good portion of that is on the, I don't know how in-depth you want to go. I mean, I certainly can get riled up again on the vehicle excise issue, but you have to understand the total budget to understand that there's about $2.8 million, $2.7 million or so of vehicle money that the town had received in the past, it's not receiving today. Right. Inside of that is a growth of about 2%, I believe almost, well, that's 2.7, and you got 5, you got 2.3 left, right? So about almost $1 million, between $1 million and $1.2 million projected, that's on new growth, and then the rest would be on the increase of about the 2% levy that we're talking about on the real estate would be a 2% increase. So you're not talking about a 10% increase on the real estate. You also have to understand the historical perspective in terms of the budget. Now, 4 years ago, in 2000, we passed a $74 million budget. Today, we're passing a $76 million budget, about a $2 million growth over 4 years, or about 2.7% over a 4-year time frame. So we're continually working in terms of controlling all the expenses. As far as the breakdown that is being asked right now, that's pretty much the breakdown you're talking about, 2.7 or so in vehicles. You're talking about $2.3 million, $2.2 million left to get you to the $4.8 million increase on the total levy, and a good portion of that $2 million is going to be on growth. It's not going to impact the tax rate, and about $1 million is going to be on the tax rate on the existing, the existing value of the existing real estate that pre-existed the growth.
Mr. President, do we know what the total of property, the car tax bills were that were just issued this summer to the residents?
The total
Car tax, total assessment.
assessed value?
Just over $5 million.
Please? 5 million?
Yes, that's almost $2.6 million higher than a year ago.
So, this budget here, on page 9 of the budget, includes $1.9 million of vehicle tax. So, we just sent out bills for $5 million, so are we expecting to decrease the amount of tax for car taxes that will be levied in the new year? Because this budget only includes $1.9 million.
Has to do with the collection rate, I suppose, but go ahead.
Yeah, what you're getting confused with is the split cycle that we have here. That we're not on a synchronized tax and fiscal year. What the $1.9 million is 40% of next April's automobile levy.
And that levy is remaining the same, so it will be another $5 million, or is that
It's expected to be the same. I don't know what the assessments are going to be. They come down from the state. The tax rate is frozen for motor vehicles by state law. So we're anticipating it's going to be the same, maybe a little higher, maybe a little lower.
Okay, thank you. And I have some questions relative to the proceeds on the sale of land. I understand that we have an inventory, a listing of real estate with a local realtor, and the the last 2 years, we have not had any receipts from the collection of the sale of land or building. I was wondering if I could get the number of properties as well as the total market value that we currently have on the market here in Cumberland? Do we have that?
I don't think we have it here with us, but could you have that for the, we're not having another public hearing. I just need to be clear on that. Okay? This is the last public hearing. Certainly, any information the council requests would need to be provided before we vote.
Well, I understand that there's a couple of pretty decent properties that we have in our inventory that for some reason have not been sold. And we're asking...
They're on the market. They probably haven't been sold. Which ones do you have in mind?
Oh, the one off of Staples Road is one, and there's a few others that I've been told are pretty decent. But my point is that we're asking the residents for $2.7 million in car taxes, which is an increase. It's more than what they paid last year, and we're asking for $1.1 million in property taxes on their residents. So we're talking about 3.8, almost $4 million of additional cash that are going to come out of the checkbooks of our residents when we're sitting on inventory, and we've had a realtor holding them for, I'm not sure how long, but from what I understand, it's been a very lengthy time. And I understand that when you have difficult financial times that you try to sell excess assets or excess inventory. So my thought would be, is if the council could consider appropriating a line for this revenue item of expected revenue from the sale of land or buildings. I mean, at this point, we've got another 10 months left in the fiscal year. Maybe we could expect to sell a piece or two, and maybe we wouldn't have to levy our residents another $1.1 million in property taxes. It's simply a consideration.
Let's just be clear.
Okay.
The bills for this budget will not be sent until next May, okay? If we have unexpected revenue in between now and up to probably April, we can certainly amend this budget. I would imagine that's the plan. Mayor?
Well, I think that it is a...
If you would, Mayor, speak to the issue of the land sales and where that stands and so forth.
Well, it's not $3.8 million of value, and I don't know the property that you're referring to on Staples Road. I'm not aware of any property that's on Staples Road other than an open space purchase that we made that we're not going to sell.
Sorry, let's Lippert Estates, I'm sorry.
Okay. And the lots in Lippert Estates, which are minimum-sized lots in this environment, I mean, the report just came out in terms of how difficult it is to sell real estate. I think the real estate sales are down 27% to a low, 15-year low in terms of real estate sales. So it's not a foregone conclusion that anything's going to be sold that you put on the market, and then when you put on the market, you're going to sell it less than value that was even a year ago. So liquidating properties it needs to be done carefully and with a great deal of forward thinking. And also plugging holes we're experiencing. We did that last year. We took about $1.3 million of surplus dollars from the town side and about $370,000 or so from the school side to minimize tax issues, and now you're dealing with filling that hole. So it's not the best strategy to take one-time revenue sources and plug long-term expenses. That's a short-term solution, and we should be working on long-term solutions. But part of that is a piece of that is the fact that the council did approve to put on a handful of properties, including the school that's on Clark Street, but in that area, along with some property on Highland and another property that's in the Lippert Estate area. So there's a list that we'd be happy to share. But I mean, to realize more than $250,000 to $400,000 in this market is probably not that realistic. And so, and to the President's point, this is a document that's going to continually be a work in progress relative to managing expenses from work that we're doing on potentially lowering, have a potential side of lowering our health insurances based on working some arrangements with a certain portion of people that are retired, that are, still on a pay-as-you-go, which we want to get into a premium base, and we're working on that to a lot of other strategies. So as that comes forward and revenues are realized, we can make a common sense approach to manage this, along with, reading on a school surplus that may be there. I've always embraced surpluses. I don't think it's anything to be ashamed of, and those all become things that are in the mix as we ultimately set tax rate come April. So I think all the things that are being mentioned are in the mix, and the idea right now, the budget's in front of you, shows about a 2% property tax increase. We don't know exactly how that's going to work out, as Steve has mentioned, in terms of the reval and the shift of value. That's a very important piece in terms of projecting or setting what the real estate tax is going to be, in terms of where the shift goes. Is the commercial property holding value better than the residential property? These are all things that are in the mix that you need to have, you need to be Kreskin to really understand what's in the envelope. So, but all those things we're going to be taking into full account, and the idea is to have a minimum, a maximum of a 2% tax increase on the real estate, and if we can reduce that, we're going to make every effort to do just that. I'd be happy to answer more questions and give you as many answers as physically possible in terms of projecting out different situations, but I think that the budget that's in front of you, makes sense on this date, and it may not make sense. There may be other things that we can do as we actually make adjustments come the January, February, March, April timeframe.
Mr. President,
Just speaking to Mr. Lambie's point as well, now, you're using a figure, I believe, from the previous discussion, that's contained in the audit as terms of what the value of our holdings are. Some of that includes the municipal buildings, schools, and so forth, correct?
No, the reserve that I referenced last time was $24 million. It was unrestricted reserves, includes the $2.4 million in the school budget or balance sheet.
I'm talking about properties.
Properties, that does not include properties, that's a separate component of the unrestricted net assets. We have, as you probably read in the Valley Breeze, Standard & Poor's came in recently, they said we were fiscally sound. That's because we have a very strong reserve. As the mayor mentioned, we've been very conservative over the years. He has not been shy about overtaxing taxpayers. In fact, 2 years ago, we ended up with a $2.4 million surplus. I know last year we had a deficit, but the year before that, we had a $2.4 million surplus according to the audit report. That's what's in the 2008 audit. That surplus was more than would have covered last year's deficit. In fact, the school department's deficit last year was just $16,000. And I want to get back to this property tax increase of $2.7 million, and we keep ignoring the fact that it's coming out of our citizens' taxpayers' wallets. It's 2.7 plus 1.1, so our residents are being asked to come up with $3.8 million. Whether you call it a car tax or a property tax, I'm sorry, it's $3.8 million, and that's what's in that top line. And my point is simply is that this year, our residents are having a difficult time putting food on the table. If any of you drove by the church up by the Mendon Firehouse this Saturday at 10 a.m., you would have seen about 100 families waiting in the food pantry line for food. On my way down here, I saw at least, to the mayor's point, at least a dozen signs for for sale property signs on the front lawns of houses on the way down here from North Cumberland. I am not all about a short-term fix. I'm talking about putting a Band-Aid on this thing and about serious reform. And here's my point. The mayor had a chance in the spring to work with the school department relative to the maintenance of effort changes in those laws for funding schools. We had a chance as a town to reduce funding to our school departments as a result of losing $5 million in state aid. We had an opportunity to reduce that funding by 5% as of last year's funding level, and another 5% this current fiscal year. That's 10% of $36 million. That's $3.6 million. The mayor had a chance to go to that school department and say, we have a big problem. We have structural issues. We have long-term issues we have to address as a town. We have to come to the table and work together, work out a long-term strategy. This is not about reducing school funding by $363,000. This is a major issue. We're losing all sorts of state funding, and that gravy train is gonna come to a screeching halt next year when you look at the projections of the state fiscal crisis that they have. I'm all about long-term solutions, and I really feel that the message should have been sent to the school department in the spring that we have a $3.6 million problem and overhauls need to be made. Instead, the school committee spent all summer trying to come up with a reduction in local appropriation of $363,000. I think that's a waste of effort, because it plugs a hole for a year, and we're going to be back at this podium next summer or next spring talking about tax increases again on our residents, which are an easier thing to do than to work on those mandates and to work on long-term solutions in the services that this town provides. And that's why I'm asking these questions.
We don't have an issue with you asking any.
No, definitely not, but also I got a point that I was spending time to close a $4 million gap by attacking and being probably the person who led the charge the most on a proper school funding formula that was passed. And so the town will realize, and if we are smart, we'll figure out a way to accelerate a $4 million amount that's going to come to the town. So I certainly wasn't sitting around doing nothing. And if you're proposing a $3.6 million decrease to the schools, I'll just sit here right now and say you're absolutely out of your mind. Okay? So because you cannot fail, even in a difficult economic time, you cannot just abandon the very tenets that create a strong community, and that's a school department which is running right now on a per pupil cost lower than any community in the state of Rhode Island. So, it's good to be sitting at the podium and understand that, but if you're saying that we should be reducing school funding by $3.6 million locally to take advantage of whatever you're suggesting, you need to spend a whole lot more time understanding this issue.
I understand it, and I'm certainly not suggesting that we cut school funding. Is really no way you could just go out and cut $3.6 million. However, the mayor had a choice. We either reduce the funding to the schools by $3.6 million, or we raise car taxes and property taxes by an amount. Now,
If you can't stand up to
Hold on.
and describe cuts. When you take out of the municipal side of government, which is $25 million, and you take the debt service out, it's $18 million. Okay, and so you're suggesting that somehow $3.6 million could come out. You've got to describe where you're going to make the $5 million of cuts. You can't just be sitting there saying, oh, geez, do you think that anybody that's sitting in these seats is not cognizant of the fact that we're going through a very difficult economic time? Do you think that we just sit here and just say, oh, geez, well, let's just whack the residents out there? Absolutely not. I just described to you where the growth in the town budget has gone 2.7% in 4 years. So, and when I left in office in 2004-05, the budget was $67 million. When I came back, it was $74 million. It was up $7 million in 2 years. In 4 years, we've increased it by a net $2 million. So if you want to describe where you want to make the cuts, and if you I may have misunderstood, but it sounded like you wanted me to go to the school department in March or April. I would have had need a crystal ball to understand exactly what was going to happen, but the General Assembly didn't pass their budget till the second week of June, and you wanted me to go to the school department and say you were down $3.6 million?
I'm saying that we had a tool, Mr. Higgins, and
Hold on. All right, we got to make sure that all comments are addressed to the council, all right? No personal interaction. Secondly, I have two councilors that want to speak, so if you don't mind, Councilor, one more.
I'd just like to follow up, I mean, there's nobody on this board more than me that has questioned the school department, and it's for the lack of my understanding that I try to educate myself and question them. And every dollar, every time I have a question, I ask it. Don't always like the answers, but I ask it. And I will tell you right now, there's no way that I could take and tell the school department, Cumberland, with the lowest cost per pupil, that we're gonna cut $3.6 million. It just wouldn't work, and I'm not even sure legally we can do that, because we can do that if, I believe if they need an education process that they have to meet minimum standards on. It just wouldn't make any sense. It sounds easy. The first part of the law says you can do it, but then there's other requirements that have to be met, which might stop us from doing it. We just can't throw that out there as that's a solution. I wouldn't support it. As much as I question the school department continually, it's just not a sensible comment to make. And to say the mayor was out, had his choice to do that, he just didn't, that's just not a right comment to make. Though I appreciate your questions and you've spoken, and I appreciate your positions. Thank you.
Councilor Morris.
Well, I clearly heard you wanted us to go, or the mayor to go to the school department. I would never vote to cut the school department by $3.6 million. We have tried every budget year to give them more than what the mayor has proposed, because we want our schools to be the best that they can possibly be. So I can't even believe that someone would come before this council and say that they think we should cut our schools, which make this community, like the mayor says, by $3.6 million. When we have, like Councilor Lemoy said, the lowest per pupil cost in the state of Rhode Island. I'm angered by your comments. I don't appreciate them at all.
My point simply was that this was a tool to consider long-term solutions. I certainly, as a very reasonable person, looking at these numbers objectively, would not have expected the school department to shave that kind of money off their budget in 1 year. Again, we're talking about 1 year. This is a middle year, a transitional year. We've got holes to fill. We've got big issues to face. That's my point. My point was we needed to deliver a message. That was it. Certainly, recommending that we cut funding to schools, I'm sorry, that is not a realistic solution at this point in time. What is a realistic solution? Use some of our surplus, sell off a couple of assets. These are real things we can do for now. My point is simply on a long-term basis, we need to look at some hard solutions there. We may have the lowest cost per pupil in the state, but our residents next year cannot afford another $4 million increase, and whether you call it a real estate or property tax increase, that's my concern. I want us as a town council, I want us as a school department to address the long-term financial needs. That's my message. Okay, that is my message, contrary to a comment that was made earlier. That is my message this evening.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lehman.
I would point out that last year, the council and we did use surplus money, and there's not a undesignated surplus that remains, period. So we used that last year, and we're closing that gap this year. Now, the funding from the state can't get any worse than it's currently got, and we expect that the school department, because of the work on the school funding, which I spent a great deal of time on that, and actually helped change that law, we're going to start receiving dollars, and we're not going to have, if we don't use surplus dollars this year, we're not going to have a surplus to close next year, so there won't be that hole, and as a result, we're going to be able to have a very minimal tax increase as a result of the budget that will get passed this year, because you're not going to have a surplus hole. But if you do fill gaps with one-time revenue sources this year, next year you are going to have to compensate for that, or you need to start selling more property or using more surplus. So this is the year where last year we had the debate where we said, this is not a good year to create tax increases, and we minimize those tax increases by using surplus. This is a year where now you have that hole as a result of using the surpluses that you're trying to fill as prudently as possible. And then next year you're going to, this council will receive a budget from me that will be virtually level funded except for the new dollars that will come in from the schools. And you're going to go out there with a very flat to zero type of tax increase structure because of the way that you've set it up. But the suggestion to use surplus that doesn't exist, right? Surplus does not exist on our town side at the moment. So you can't use surplus that doesn't exist. And then the other issue right now is that if you do a passive budget that is not filled with one-time revenue sources next year, which, who knows, things could get worse. We just heard things are going to get worse from Mr. Laney. So next year we're going to be in a pretty good position as a town because we're not going to be required to really be looking at tax increases, and then the General Assembly restores funding to vehicles on a basis of vehicle value. We'll actually be in a better position than we are currently. And also I would also say inside the budget here where we've taken the dollars that were allocated for vehicles, the $206,000, and we have not used that in the framework of the ongoing expenses. Because if that gets pulled next year, you're going to be back at the same spot again, and you're going to need to go collect those dollars. But if you put it into an expense like a retrofit of the field and match a grant, like we said, next year when it comes around, you're not going to have that hole. So we've done the things last year that are being suggested at the podium right now. So we were well ahead of the suggestions that are being made, and I would say that we're moving in the right direction, and to state that somehow we're going to be looking for $4 to $5 million or more of tax revenue from the residents next year is a false comment, and it's made from a point of not understanding, or more of like not really fully understanding what's coming forward. So there's not a $4 or $5 million increase in property taxes projected next year at all. In fact, if we don't fill long-term expenses with one-time revenue sources, we should be virtually flat next year.
Councilor Morris?
I also just want to comment that I know, I've been on the council for 4 years now, and over the course of the 4 years and even over the last 2 years, the mayor's worked very hard with the council to find new revenue sources. We've gotten revenue from cell phone tower, which was an unexpected revenue. We have increased licensing fees, zoning fees, planning fees, building inspection fees, all kinds of things where they're user fees instead of putting it on the residents. So no one's sitting around all year long waiting for some, cash to fall from the sky. We've worked very hard, and the mayor has worked very hard to get that unexpected revenue over the last, couple of years, and also the 4 years that I've been on the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Morris. Do you have any, we're having basically a discussion here, or a forum, a give and take, that's really about the whole budget as a whole. And I want to get back to the format of running this particular hearing, which is specific items on general revenue. You were talking, obviously, property taxes. I understand your point completely about it is coming out of the taxpayer's pocket. It certainly is. But more than 3/4 of it is because the state took the money away from us. And I agree, I think we all agree with your point about long-term solutions. And every department, whether it's the school or the municipal side, needs to, basically the mayor said this a number of times, the basic delivery system that we have, both for education and for certain items such as public safety, will not be in place in 5 or 6 years, maybe 10. So do you have any more questions, Mr. Lambie, on general revenue?
I have one more.
Yes,
I
sir.
promise.
Go ahead. You don't have to promise anything.
Thank you. then I
I
may,
know
I
it's
may
hard.
take that back.
I know it's hard sitting there. I know, we admire you. No, we admire what you're.
No, I'm fine with it, but
right.
I do want to point out that the mayor's comment...
Maybe we're not too thrilled with some of the comments in terms of whether they're accurate or not, but we certainly admire your right to speak. Go ahead.
Trust me, it's a crash course for me, so I will
Yeah.
do my very best, okay?
Okay, no problem.
But the mayor's comment that we will not see a tax increase next year is a great one, because I'm excited about that. And that's really my point relative to spreading this tax increase out over a couple of years. We have the ability as a town council, to say, you know what, we're not expecting, with some long-term vision, we're not expecting to raise our taxes next year. So why are we going to go back at the taxpayers for $4 million this year? Why don't we raise it $2 million this year and $2 million next year to soften the blow? That's my point, okay? And then my other point is, relative to the surplus that we keep talking about that this town does not have, we have to refer to the Standard & Poor's report. They just came out. They gave us a AAA bond rating. We have some of the lowest interest rate costs around. That's because we have surpluses. That's because the mayor and the town council does a good job of managing its budget. If we did not have surpluses, we would not get a AAA bond rating. So and if you turn to about page 9 of the audit report, it says unrestricted surplus of $24 million. Every year, every summer, the town finance department goes out and it borrows tax anticipation notes against that reserve. Some years it's 14 million, some years it's 9 million. Okay, we have that ability to do that. Millions of dollars we can borrow. All we have to do is make the call. At 1.5%, I think it's even touted. 1.5% it takes us. So we can use some of that. So my point is, we've got a small hole here to patch. The council has options. We can use some of that surplus. We can spread the tax increase over a couple of years. And relative to my point, relative to the 3.6 million to the school department...
Is that a question? Was that a question?
Which one?
I don't know. I'm asking, are you asking a question?
Yeah, I'm wondering if the town council has considered possibly spreading the property tax increase over a 2-year period instead of, if the plan for the town is that we will expect no tax increase next year, is it possible the town council and the mayor's office has considered spreading that over 2 years?
Mayor?
Well, first, I said that it should be in the flat side, and I didn't say that it should be zero, so I think that, again, you need to be careful of what you state, and this year, we're talking about a maximum 2% increase, and there's a lot of variables that are still sitting there that could reduce that, and we'll be making every effort to do that. There isn't $24 million in a surplus. I want to just tell you right now. And then borrowing right now does not make a lot of sense to me personally. I don't think you borrow your way out of a problem. In fact, we haven't borrowed any new dollars since I've been in office in 2008, and we've reduced our debt by about $4 million a year, and that makes sense in this economic time not to carry on new debt. And to answer the question that was asked in terms of can you try to spread out whatever, calculate what your increase should be and split the baby in half and put half this year and half the following year, you need money to actually pay your bills. So this budget is predicated on actually being able to pay the bills. And you've heard bordering communities who can't pay their teachers, or they can't pay, or who can't pay they need a receiver, for God's sakes. So you have to pay your bills. So cash flow is built into this whole strategy, is to make sure that you have enough cash flow, that you're building cash flow through this whole process, so that you're not put in a position where you can't pay your bills. And when you look at $18 million of dollars that you actually manage after debt service, and you have to pay your debt service, that's a small amount of money as you start chopping off $1 million here, $1 million there. Eventually, you're going to be in a spot where you won't have any cash in the bank, and then you're going to be forced to borrow, which is long-term borrowing at this point in time does not make a whole lot of sense to me personally, anyways.
And the other thing I would point out, okay, while we're on the subject of revenue, even though we haven't gotten through all the lines, is that the total revenue for fiscal year 9-10 in the budget was $77,519,478, and the proposed for this year is $76,220,999. It's true, due to the state cuts, that a lot of that is being borne by the taxpayer. But we have to have a solution, or we have to shut the government down or something. But, I mean, I've said that before, and people send me emails and so forth. I understand that's not a realistic issue. But we are in a situation in the town, on the town side, where a lot of the solutions are not really solutions. I mean, you can lay off people, but then you have to lay off 2 people to make 3 people to make up for 1, and then you put 3 people out of work. Do you have any other questions on revenue, Mr. Lambie?
Yes, using your own surplus is not considered borrowing. I don't know if any of you have a savings account, but if you go to a surplus that you've
I don't think
saved...
the mayor said that.
Oh, okay.
The mayor, basically, it sounded like you said that we should utilize loans to fund the budget.
Short-term TANs, tax anticipated notes, they come due within 12 months, so you get them and you pay
We
for
do
them.
TANs to fund revenue because we're unsynchronized. We do TANs to fund revenue that doesn't come in until a certain time, and then
Right.
we pay them off. But I also know, in conversation with the mayor, is that the cost of TANs are going up as well. And if we were to have a surplus and spend it all, I'm guessing that some of the dollars he's referring to is in restricted accounts, then our bond rating would go down and our interest rates would go up, and so, Mayor?
Well, first, I can't let a comment that says that this $24 million surplus stand. It doesn't, there's not a $24 million.
We knew about it, Mr. Lambie, by the way. We were looking for the
So to give the impression that somehow there's $24 million sitting in our checking account is just not true, all right? Second of all, we do use TANs, and I think that we're using them. The common council approved to borrow TANs up to, I think it was $12 million this year, and we had borrowed the first $4 million, but we're taking an increment so that we keep the interest cost down as low as we can. So the next batch that we anticipate that we would need would be in the early fall in that area. So we are already using the TANs to a level, and that's the reason Standard & Poor's gave us a rating. I wish we had a AAA rating, but we don't have a AAA rating. We have an A rating, which is several steps away from a AAA, and certainly one of my goals would be to get into that AA, AAA territory, but that's not the case. And they didn't refer to a $24 million surplus in their report. I've read their report, and if they did, I would have called them up and asked them where would they find it, because a lot of our problems could be solved if we did have a $24 million surplus.
Relative to the points relative to spending on debt, I do want to point out, we had talked a little bit about debt and that we're paying down the debt. But in the financial statements last year, there was a $46 million liability that was disclosed relative to the post-employment health benefits provided, I believe, to the police department. It's a $46 million bill. The actuaries have told us as a town that we need to put aside $3.7 million each year. Our budget is 76.2. We're supposed to be putting $3.7 million away for this one benefit for one particular group of people, most of them who are not on active status.
Well, that's a good point. If it's accurate, I'm not saying it is. But I'm a little confused now, because it appears that in one time you're telling us to cut revenues, and then now you're telling us we should increase them to fund these liabilities, is that it?
No, that's a great question. My point is simply is that we've got a little bit of time to buy here.
I don't see where we have a lot of time.
We have a year. We can saddle the taxpayers with $4 million in additional taxes, which the bills have already gone out. There's not much we can do.
Let's be clear, we're not saddling them with $4 million. The General Assembly is saddling them with $2.5 million, okay? We didn't increase our tax rate. They took it away. You want the 2.5 million, go down there and tell them.
My point is that the townspeople, Mr. President, have had to reduce their household budgets
Absolutely.
for loss in income, and I would expect that the town would be able to rally and do something similar. Now, I realize that we've cut the budget 1.2% or thereabouts, but when we're losing $5 million in state money, and there's potential that we could lose more next year,
Yeah,
my concern is long-term.
absolutely.
And we have a short-term problem to fix, and that is, we're going to be asking our taxpayers again, in addition to this car tax, it sounds like we're going to ask them for another 1.1 million in property tax increases. And I'm wondering if, between the mayor's office and the town council, my question is, can we find 1.1 million in either surpluses, land, somewhere, so we don't have to send that bill to the taxpayers? And if the mayor's correct, and he's able to hold the line on taxes next year, we've done a good job. And we've got long-term issues to deal with. We've got escalating costs for delivering education, and we've got these unfunded pension liabilities and unfunded post-employment health benefits that we've promised to our police officers that we have to deal with. Those are points I want to make tonight. They may not directly be related to the revenue, but these are big, big numbers. These are big issues that I feel that need to be corralled during the current fiscal year.
Okay, hopefully between now and April, we can find some of that 1.1. Do you have any other questions, Mr. Lamy, on revenue?
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor?
Again, I can't let inaccurate financial statements be made on the podium and have anybody who's listening to this think that that's true. There's not an annual $3.6 million amount that's somehow supposed to go to the police pension. It is true that it is underfunded at the moment on market conditions and also some historical timeframes when you haven't made full contributions for that. But we do an annual actuary. Last year, the actuary was in about $1.3 million range. This year, it's slightly higher. It's not in the $3.6 million range. And, and that's an area where there's an inconsistency in what was stated, is that, that's what we're dealing with. We're juggling everything we possibly can juggle to make this work in the short term and trying to stabilize ourselves so that if things do get worse, that we'll be in a position where we continue to do some level funding as we have done. Remember, the increase of the $76 million, some $74 million to $76 million over the last 4 years, almost $1.3 million of that is a new debt service. Right, so the actual cost of operations on both the school side and the town side over a 4-year time frame has increased by about $700,000. I mean, we've been managing this issue far in advance of the critical states that other communities are in, and we're in that position to move forward. But the police pension issue is not an issue that, can be ignored, but I can tell you that it's one that's the type of thing that I think that makes a lot more sense than increasing that contribution to a higher level, and then putting that tax burden on the residents. That doesn't make any sense to me at this point in time. So again, I just want to make sure that we correct anything that comes on the financial side, to really fully understand that our actuaries do not show a $3.6 million annual contribution that needs to be made to the police pension. That just, when we came in, we weren't doing actuaries. We were supposed to do it every 2 years. The council at that time that Councilor Muddle was on, we started to do annual actuaries, and we have a pretty good idea of where we are on the police pension. There's some work to be done, but somewhere down the line makes a lot more sense than right now.
Is there any other questions on general revenue? Anybody else have a question before? Let's take somebody else for a minute. Oh, you want a clarification? On what? I really don't want to get into a debate about police pensions. This isn't part of the budget. If that's what you want to talk about, you can have a discussion at some other time. What's the other question? Council Motta. Committeeman Motta.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually, part of my question actually, I think, relates to Mr. Lambie's intent, and that's why you would be looking for what the unaudited first quarter collection rate was and the levy worksheet, because if it was a conservative number, as you know, we don't set the levy until April, so there's a possibility that you would not be taxing the residents at the number that's in front of you. And also, at that time, there's obviously going to have to be a lot of discussion between, all members of the government over the next, few months anyway. So that, it really was my intent on that question. If we're using 44%, or we're using 43%, and we have collected greater than that, that gives you some flexibility as you get closer to setting the actual levy, which may reduce that $1.1 million obligation on the property tax that Mr. Lambie is speaking to.
Now, are you saying that when we set the levy in April, that the number that's in this budget will limit our ability to lower that amount, or?
No, but there needs to be some sort of levy worksheet that justifies that 55, 751, 353. Now, I wouldn't ask you to necessarily disagree with it, but if it was using a highly conservative number, it would allow you flexibility when you actually do it in April, when you match up some real numbers as to what would be projected numbers right now. However, if you were using a number that was, a little risky and was really high, that wouldn't afford you the same opportunity. Currently, we don't know which number you're using. That's my point. I don't know if we're erring on the side of a very conservative number based on history, or we're picking a pie-in-the-sky number that is going to really force you, when it comes down to the levy time, to be looking at a number that's actually higher. Obviously, you're going to make up the difference. You're going to have to collect a certain amount of dollars, but it's going to matter. The percentage collection rate is obviously going to have a huge effect on what the actual rate is. To Mr. Lambie's point, as you know also, if there were some other revenue sources that came in, then you obviously wouldn't have the obligation that you would need to meet on the property tax side. But I'm just, as a purist, just wanting to know, I would like to know what that percentage, that collection percentage that is being used to fund this budget. Thank you.
Did you say what the percentage is on the property tax? What's the collection rate you used, Mr. Warner, the anticipated collection? Obviously, we don't have a levy sheet,
This year,
which is what, 43.8%?
yes. And I used a slightly lower number for motor vehicles. And the reason being for that is because we're taxing many cars now that weren't taxed before, and the feeling is that it's going to be harder to collect those taxes for people who haven't been paying taxes. For instance, Providence only collects 71% of their motor vehicle taxes. Now, they've got a large student population that, doesn't like to pay car taxes. And they have a much more transient population than Cumberland does. But it'd be my guess that the collection percentage on motor vehicles is going to drop this year and next year from what it historically has been, because you're going to get the taxes from the people that own the $20,000 cars. But for people who own the cars that are worth $1,500, one, you would think they have less money, and two, they haven't been used to paying those taxes, and the easiest thing to do is put a bill in the wastebasket versus paying it.
So we're going to get a levy worksheet
Yes.
before Thursday. Understand?
You can have it tomorrow morning if you want.
All right. And on that worksheet, it's your estimation is, what would be the collection rate reflected? 43 point whatever?
The real estate will be the same as this year, 43.8%.
Okay.
And the motor vehicles will probably be around 42.
We didn't have really a motor vehicle, we had some that we were taxing, but, it's a significant larger amount of money, correct? That we're trying to collect.
It's almost double.
Right. Mr. Mutter, is that it? If you could, please provide the members of the school committee with the same somehow, Madam Clerk, perhaps we could get that to them as well, okay?
I can email, I've got Alex's
Okay.
email if he doesn't mind forwarding it for me.
If it's possible, we're looking for the unaudited actual collection for the first quarter, that you're matching.
I don't know if it has those figures yet, but
I can get those. What cutoff date do you want me to use?
Well,
Do you
I'm
want me
just
to
saying
use
that if-
July 15th? Do you want me to use July 31st? Do you want me to use June 30th? Whatever day you want, I can get for you.
Well, if the bill was due May 31st, how long do people have to pay for it to be assigned to the first quarter collection?
August 31st.
August 31st, and we're at August 24th now.
And I gave you the August 24th numbers earlier today.
Right, but it was 46.some%.
But that includes some of the second quarter. It's a lengthy analysis. It can't be done by Thursday to go through each batch and find out what the collections are that relate to the first quarter versus the second quarter.
And you
It's
can't-
going to be done, but it's not going to be done tomorrow.
So if it's, you can pay up to August 31st, what you're saying is some people are paying their second bill before, before other people have paid their first bill? And not all that money is the first quarter bill?
Yeah, I can't give you a concrete example of taxpayer X or Y, but certainly some people haven't paid their first quarter bills yet.
But I mean,
Certainly some people have paid everything. Probably there's some people paid the first and the second quarter, although, especially as of the 24th. Now, if I cut that back to July 15th, I don't think there are going to be any payments on second quarter bills except for the people who paid 100% of their taxes. So that would be a nice conservative number if you want that. I can give you 3 dates, and then we can see if there's much variability between them.
well, I mean, if people pay the whole thing, it still goes into the first quarter.
Yes, it does.
Right.
But they would have paid by June 30th, I'm sure.
So I'm looking for as close as I can, because that's what we've always done. And that's the number that you're basing it on. If it was, you can't
Well,
use,
they wouldn't have that in June.
well, you can't use 43.8 if you collected 41.8. So you have to, if you're using 43.8, there has to be some reason why you're using 43.8. And respectfully, it can't be because that's the number you used last year.
Well, I apologize for being confused, but if this budget's normally done in June, you don't know what the first quarter tax receipts are, because the first quarter extends beyond June 8th.
I understand that, but this year is August 24th. I'm just looking for what, that way you have a unique opportunity to know a lot closer what the actual number is before you set it. And it should be part of your deliberation, because if it is highly conservative, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but when that comes to the point and the discussions are going to be made, and if you need to look at fund balances wherever they may be, and you might choose to do so in April or May, that's fine. But if the number, it sounds to me like I think the number's really conservative, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But if it wasn't, because you don't know, right now you don't know. If it wasn't really conservative, then you don't want to be giving yourself a problem in April or May when you come up and say, well, you know, something that number was really too high, and now we're going to be raising the rate a lot higher to meet it. So it's just a curious point, but I think at this point in time, you have an opportunity. Forget about when you would do it in June, you're doing it in late August, and you should have a better idea on that number. Thank you.
Well, we know 46.5% has been collected through today.
okay. So what does that mean in terms of the number we insert in this?
I think we're very close to the 44% that was budgeted.
Okay. Do you have another question, Mr. Landy? Does anyone else wish to speak? Next, we'll go to state aid and grants. When you hear the zeros and the reductions, that's where the $5 million quote increase is. General revenue sharing, prior year's budget, $599,000. This year's budget proposed $0. Telephone tax, prior year $279,556, proposed $309,629. School housing, prior year's budget $1,777,883, proposed $1,762,792. Library housing, Prior year, $180,126, proposed $210,533. Motor vehicle phase-out, prior year, $2,787,441, proposed $206,338. Total state aid and grants, prior year, $5,624,006, proposed $2,489,292. Does anyone wish to speak to that category, state aid and grants? School receipts, this is still revenue. State aid to schools, prior year, $11,593,145, proposed $9,911,324. Literacy grant, proposed $334,046, same as the prior year. Prior year, limited English proficiency, same as this year, $327,758. Miscellaneous, grants. Grants, prior year, $2,067,023, proposed $583,224. Miscellaneous, prior year, $2,367,023, proposed $3,661,200. And appropriation from school surplus, prior year, $373,383, proposed $0. Does anyone wish to speak on school receipts? Alex or Dr. Morrell, could you come up, any of the counselors have any questions on any of these lines? I'm just wondering why the grants line went down. Does that have to do with the, I'm at a loss to that, the Obama plan there.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Which line item?
Grants, why are grants down from 2 million to 580?
We didn't prepare this.
Oh, okay, I thought this came out of your budget. All right, sorry, Dr. Morrell.
Thank you.
Mayor? All right, Mr. Warner?
I believe the difference is just a reclassification. I didn't really work on this section of the budget. I took what was prepared. But when we reconciled in total, it came out fairly close.
Okay.
I think a big item that's reconciling between categories is the stimulus money.
Right, that's what I meant, stimulus money. All right. So the total school receipts line, I don't know if I read it, 17 million, this is prior year, 17,062,378. And the proposed school receipts for this budget is 14,817,552. Any questions? Yes, Mr. Lambie.
I understand that the federal government has printed some more money, and I believe that we are in line to receive some more funds. So,
Are you referring to race to the top?
no, that's some more money, right? 75 million, I understand, that's fantastic. I commend her.
It's probably restricted in what you can use it for, that's it.
Versus unrestricted, sure. But I guess my point is a couple of weeks ago, job stimulus bill, another one was passed, and I believe there was some Medicaid money that's coming to Rhode Island, as well as some school funding money. And I was wondering if we had some indication as to how much money that may be ending up in the town of Cumberland's hands. I understand that that money is supposed to be received by the second week in September.
Do you guys know anything about that?
At this point, I can speak to the process that I'm aware of. I've received communication from Commissioner Gist's office that there has been guidance published on the Federal Department of Education website. The guidance, however, is for states, and that it's Governor Carcieri's responsibility to apply for the funds. I believe that Mr. Lambie is talking about the jobs bill that was passed. Is that the money you're talking about? once the state applies for the funds, they will come through the Department of Education, they will go to local school departments through the Title I appropriations, and we will have a year from the date that they're awarded to the state to draw down the funds. So not unlike the stimulus funds, they can either be applied to immediate programming or programming that will support the school department over the course of the next 12 months. So as I receive additional guidance from our local Department of Education, then we'll start making decisions about whether or not it's in the best interest of the school department to use those funds immediately or to make plans for them in a longer period of time. And I think that goes to some of the comments that were made previously at the podium, that it requires a thoughtful process about the monies that are available to us now, monies that are available to us in the future, and what it is that we actually want to deliver with those dollars. So as I said, as soon as I receive that guidance, I will actually be able to communicate that back to the council if you'd like that information.
We certainly want any information on any additional revenues that are not in this budget,
I would be happy to do that.
because we would like to work within our means and certainly recognize we are in lean times, and if we're getting, whereas we complain when the state takes it away, if the federal government's giving it to us on a different avenue, then we can hope to lessen the burden on the taxpayer. That would be the goal of this council, I'm sure.
I suspect that one of the reasons it may be coming through Title I funding is because of the specific guidelines for how to use that, and that
Sure.
may not be why it's coming through some broader mechanism, but I won't know that until we're actually informed.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Library receipts, revenue, fiscal year 2009, 2010, 272, 267, proposed 273, 455. Anyone wish to speak on library receipts? So the total revenue for prior year, as I previously indicated, was $77,519,478, and the proposed total revenue expected, hopefully, is $76,220,999. What? 76 million, not thousand, 220,999. Last call on revenue. All right, before we start on the expense side, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. We've been at this an hour and a half, and some of us need more water and so forth. Thank you. We'll be right back. Are you turning that up or down?
One goes up, one goes down.
Up, you mean?
It's a yo-yo.
I don't care, I'm not freezing. Okay, we'll resume our hearing. And we are now on the expenditures or expenses side. You will note in many of these that they are lower or equal to the previous years. There are a few exceptions, which we had questions about at the first hearing, but in any event, we'll do the item called general government. The prior year general government budget was $159,700, and the proposed is $156,506. That's the mayor's office. Town clerk, prior year budget $263,813, proposed $223,733. Council, prior year $36,900, proposed $33,222. Town solicitor, prior year $191,977, proposed $179,121. Municipal court, prior year $41,904, proposed $41,066. Town officers, and I believe there will be an amendment on this one. Prior year is $5,300, proposed $1,803. That's not an accurate figure. It's probably going to go up about $3,000, I believe. We'll get to that with when we do amendments. Next is boards and commissions, prior year $4,000, proposed $3,250. Probate court, prior year $8,332, proposed $7,832. And board of canvassers in an election year, prior year $35,094, proposed $77,022. The total general government expenditures, prior year $747,20, proposed $723,556. Does anyone wish to speak on this general government? Next, we have community development. We have planning, prior year budget $203,646, proposed $198,103. Zoning board, prior year $54,144, proposed $53,061. Total community development, prior year $257,790, proposed $251,164. Does anyone wish to speak on community development? Financial administration. This includes the finance office and the tax assessor. Prior year budget $704,878, proposed $754,480. The tax assessor, prior year $180,140, proposed $176,537. Financial administration, prior year $885,18, proposed $931,18. Does anyone wish to speak on finance administration? Public safety, police. Prior year $3,673,497, proposed $3,600,027. Telecommunications, prior year $294,768, proposed $288,873. Rescue service, prior year $1,305,207, proposed $1,279,103. And animal control, prior year $129,313, proposed $126,727. Total expenditures, public safety, prior year $5,402,785, proposed $5,294,729. Does anyone wish to speak on public safety? Public works. Prior year for inspection, $154,791, proposed $151,695. Public Works Department, prior year $2,316,362, proposed $2,451,335. Highway, prior year $1,660,232, proposed $1,627,027. Town Hall, prior year $144,662, proposed $141,769. And Recreation, prior year $246,222, proposed $241,298. Total Public Works, prior year $4,522,269, proposed $4,613,124. Does anyone wish to speak on Public Works? What was the reason for the increase in the Public Works line, Mr. Warner? I asked you last time.
Yes, it was new contracts that were signed in September for recycling and garbage pickup.
Okay, so it's a cost increase in trash collection
Yeah, contractual.
and recycling. And, next item, under expenses, is other departments. We have the senior citizens, prior year $167,832, proposed $164,475. Children and learning, prior year $69,440, proposed $68,051. Total other departments, $237 for the prior year, $237,272, proposed $232,527. Does anyone wish to speak on other departments? Next item is library, total prior year $1,457,386, proposed $1,428,238. Does anyone wish to speak on library? We want to note that in these troubled economic times, the library offers a very important service to the community, provides free entertainment, free knowledge, free papers. We hope everyone utilizes it. Next is the expenditures, other. Municipal dues, prior year $13,476, proposed $13,476. Outside agencies, prior year $67,400, proposed $57,900. Emergency management, prior year $10,000, proposed $10,000. Mason Building, prior year $9,000, proposed $8,500. Contingencies, prior year $100,000, proposed $100,000. Efficiency contingencies, prior year 0, proposed $138,415. Capital improvements, prior year $128,000, proposed $128,000. Computer systems and equipment, prior year $19,000, proposed $19,000. Network management services, proposed prior year $4,050, proposed $4,050. Software and conversion, prior year $11,500, proposed $11,500. Information technology, proposed prior year, $9,150, proposed $9,150. Information technology salary, prior year $51,800, proposed $51,800. Traffic calming plan, prior year $10,000, proposed $10,000. Veterans services, prior year $3,000, proposed $3,000. Stress, prior year $10,000, proposed $10,000. Tucker Field grant match, prior year 0, proposed $206,338. Litter control, prior year $10,000, proposed $10,000. Revaluation, prior year 0, proposed $60,000. School improvement, prior year $50,000, proposed 0. Franklin Farms grant match, prior year $34,000, proposed 0. Adult literacy program, prior year $2,500, proposed $2,500. Total other expenditures, prior year $542,876, proposed $542,876, proposed $853,629. Does anyone wish to speak to other expenditures? The Tuckerfield match is for a grant for what? Yes, Mr. Lambie? Tuckerfield grant is a match for a DEM grant, or, Mayor?
That's the, excuse me. The initial improvements was done with a $300,000 DEM grant. There's currently a $300,000 DEM grant that has been available for the last few years, but has been unexpended, and to release those dollars, you need to come up with an equal match in either dollars or in-kind type of contribution.
So you're getting 2 for 1? 2 for 1?
Yeah, and you're running into a spot where you're starting to really push the envelope relative to whether or not DM always has the ability to pull those dollars if they feel as though they're not going to be used, and then reapply those. Because that's happened to us on the other side of the coin in terms of open space acquisition, where we were able to use unexpended dollars from other communities in the past and use it in our town.
Thank you. Mr. Lambie?
The fringe benefits section, 4.5 million.
We're not on that item yet, Mr. Lambie. We're on other expenditures.
Oh, I'm sorry, there was other financial expenditures, I'm sorry.
That's okay. No questions on that one?
No.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? All right, next is other financial expenses. Prior year debt service to the town. The debt service town, I'm sorry, payments of debt service by the town. Prior year, $1,436,584. Proposed, $1,467,605. Debt service school, prior year, $4,740,494. Proposed, $5,008,508. Town master lease expense, prior year, $188,812. Proposed, $200,000. And fringe benefits, prior year, $4,209,704. Proposed, $4,558,900. The total for other financial services for the prior year was $10,575,594. It's proposed to be $11,235.13. Questions on other financial expenses? Mr. Lambie?
Thank you. The June 3009 audited statement on page 44 indicates that we have a unfunded police health insurance obligation of $46.8 million. The actuaries calculate an annual required contribution of $3.7 million, which the town funded $1.5 million last year in 2000, the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2009. That required the auditors to add another $2 million in obligations to our balance sheet. My question is, and that information can be found on page 44 of the prior year audit report, the current year fringe benefit line of $4.5 million includes health insurance of just about $2 million. And my question is does that $2 million represent part of what the required funding obligation is for the policeman's health insurance benefits?
Mr. Warner?
The accounting rules for funding of post-employment retirement benefits do not require funding on an actuarial basis. They only require funding on a pay-as-you-go basis, which is what the town's chosen to do. Mr. Lambie's correct that the size of that liability is striking. But the town, unless you want to raise taxes by that amount, doesn't have the funds to bolster the expense line item. Unfortunately, this is the same situation that all cities and towns are facing, and not just in Rhode Island.
So is that number based on a potential exposure, or is it?
No, we have about $900,000 in expenses for retiree health care benefits.
Okay. And those
It
are,
tucked into that number, but we couldn't justify putting in $3.6 million for that line item.
right.
So my point is that we don't have the whole funding obligation in this budget. And when the fiscal year is done this coming year, the auditors are going to put another $2 million or so, whatever we don't fund, they're going to add that to our list of obligations and add another $2 million because we're not putting enough into this fund. I understand the concept of pay-as-you-go. It's kind of like the pension system. You pay as you go, and then you have an unfunded liability. I think the point here is, as Mr. Warner put it, is that the liability is staggering. It needs to be addressed, it needs to be controlled on a going-forward basis. The fact that right now the town council is going to adopt a budget with a line item that says $1.9,083,000, when that line should be, according to the people who run the numbers, about $2 million higher, is the point I want to make.
So what's the point, though? I mean, you want us to raise the property tax line by $2 million before you were arguing that we should lower it? I'm confused what the point is.
My point is we have an expense.
Is there? Well, I understand that. I mean, that's not relative to this budget. I mean, we can't fund $3 million in this budget.
Agreeable, but,
Right.
I mean, my question to the town council would be, in the mayor's office, do we know we have this growing issue? Do we
I'm
know?
sure they're well aware of all the liability issues potential that there are. I think the only thing at this point that they can do is pay as you go. I mean, if everyone retires and gets sick at the same time, I guess we'll owe $4 million. Is that how that number is based on, right?
46 million, right?
46?
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions, Sarah? Thank you. Anybody else? All right, school department. Prior year budget, 36 million, this is the town's contribution. 36,202,474, proposed town contribution for this fiscal year is 35,840,449. And other sources, this is for the school department. Prior year budget, 16,688,995. Proposed, 14,817,552. So the total school department budget for fiscal year, the prior fiscal year, as far as the town side is concerned, or not including grants and so forth, correct? Is 52,891,469, and the proposed budget is 50,658,01. Does anyone wish to speak on the school department? Or we'll take questions from counselors, or anybody wish to speak on the school department? Dr. Morel?
Good evening. Actually, I'm very pleased to join you tonight and just have some very limited remarks to make. This is very late in the budget season, and I know everyone's been working very, very hard to prepare budgets, both on the school side and on the town side. I don't have to repeat the comments of many folks that have either spoken on a previous evening or tonight about the economy, the finances in town, the finances, and your hopes and goals for the school department. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes tonight maybe just reframing our hopes for us as partners going forward, because I know Councilor Morris earlier tonight talked about the town council's prior commitment to the school department, and I think it's really important that at this particular juncture, understand that we've been working really hard to be good custodians of the resources that you've provided to us, and that we're very appreciative of everything the town's been able to provide to us. I know some figures were bandied about earlier that, yes, we are still, unfortunately, the lowest per pupil district in the state, and we hope that that's going to turn the corner at some point with a funding formula. But nonetheless, we've been allocating those funds in really focused, targeted ways. In the midst of an economy that's deteriorating, there's really good news in the school department with regard to the achievements that we've been able to make with your support. Some of this has been announced in the newspaper over the past many months, but standing here tonight, under these circumstances, I would like to point some of them out to you, and maybe just take a minute to celebrate together about the progress that the schools are making. So first and foremost, we've been working really hard to allocate funds to our elementary schools, and particularly to BF Norton School and to Ashton School. I know that you are aware that those schools had previously been identified as schools in need of improvement, and this year, for the first time, all of the elementary schools in Cumberland met annual yearly progress. And although we're still offering school choice this year, because it is a federal requirement that has to happen 2 years in a row, that is a real turning point for the district. It means that all of the student subgroups in the school met their targets, and the school itself met its targets. So even though we're standing here tonight and we're talking about sort of that difficult situation of how we can continue to work together and provide support, how you can provide support to us financially and how we can use those resources, it's really clear to me, and I think it's really clear to the school committee, and I hope it's really clear to the community, that the decisions that have been made previously are starting to have a return on the investment, and that, as I said, I think we want you to know, or hope that you feel, that we're good custodians of those resources. On top of that, one of our elementary schools was one of 20 elementary schools in the state of Rhode Island, actually 20 schools, that was identified as a Regents Commended School. That is a recognition that is given to select schools in the state, either because of closing equity gaps or because of a significant trend in improvement, and Cumberland Hills School was identified as a Regents Commended School. Again, that doesn't happen without the kind of dedicated resources that you've been providing to us over quite a number of years now. I mean, I'll be starting year 6 as superintendent, and we're trying to, stay the course in certain areas. Literacy, it's really important. Kids reading, writing, speaking, listening. Mathematics, we've talked about those goals, and we're going to be rolling out a new math scope and sequence this year, and the whole notion of behavior expectations, and I know you know about our PBIS program. So those things are really building a foundation in the district. That foundation is also paying off at the not the elementary level, but at the middle school level. Both North Cumberland Middle School and Joseph McCourt Middle School also met all of their achievement targets. And in addition to that, we have a group of students in Cumberland which are known as English language learners, and there's a very special achievement target that they have to meet, and both the schools and the district met what's called the annual measurable achievement objectives for English language learners. So when we think about Cumberland as a suburban community and know in fact that it has characteristics of kind of an urban ring community, the resources that we have, while they're limited at times, are being focused in targeted areas, and in partnership, school committee, who's in the audience tonight, and the town council are really making good decisions on behalf of Cumberland kids, and those decisions are paying off. So as I'm coming here tonight, just, as I said, to make some really brief remarks about the work that's happening, and to acknowledge that we know that the resources are limited this year, it's really a message of appreciation. It's a message to say thank you from the faculty. It's a message to say thank you from the administration, that we've been able to set this foundation in place, and that hopefully the foundation will weather the hard times that we're feeling right now, and that we won't have to put an additional burden on the taxpayers from the school department. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about Cumberland High School, and I just want to read an excerpt from a letter that we received from the Commissioner's office that I think will make you really excited. So one of the things that we're responsible to do is to design a new diploma system for Cumberland and for Cumberland High School. And every 2 years, there's a review process in place. And actually, you might remember the first time around, Cumberland was not on the check-off list. We really struggled to get the beginnings of this system in place. The second time around, however, when they came back and we provided some additional documentation, Cumberland got its first approval at the high school. So 2 years have gone by, believe it or not, and it's back for the next checkpoint. And that happened in 2010 in the spring. It's called a Commissioner's Review. And we received a letter in February directed to my office, which I think really goes to the whole community, though. Congratulations to you and your school community on successfully completing the 2010 Commissioner's Review. As you are aware, in January 2008, the Board of Regents for Elementary and Secondary Education approved a new set of secondary school regulations. These regulations require local educational agencies to develop a means to certify that beginning with the class of 2012, all students demonstrate the required proficiencies in order to graduate. Through a review of documentation and on-site collection of evidence, the Commissioners' review teams reviewed the evidence of implementation of the diploma system in Cumberland. As a result of this review process, it is determined that Cumberland successfully completed the 2010 review process and has made progress toward meeting the 2012 criteria. And that's really good news, because eventually in 2014, we need to get the stamp of approval to be able to give out what's called a Board of Regents diploma. So listening to the mayor tonight talk about his advocacy for the funding formula, which we're really excited will bring, starting next year, we hope, some additional dollars into the community. We've taken some steps that were targets in our budget this year to try to kind of stay the course and keep our budget level funded. And I know that you know we've done that in previous years around health care, transportation, other contract issues. We had targets in the budget on a retirement incentive. We saw that probably, in all likelihood, because of the economy, that critical mass of senior teachers did not retire this year, and that was going to put a huge strain on the budget. So we put a package together that actually encouraged the necessary 20 teachers at the top step to make the decision to go on to the next phase of their lives, and that really dramatically lowered the salary line item in the budget. It was close to a $500,000 line item, and we met that target. We also had, as you know, probably a line item at about $500,000 that we briefly considered as an elementary school or reorganization. For this current budget, we looked at other savings. We went back and we lowered our substitute line item, special ed tuitions. We actually reduced the assistant superintendent's job from full-time to .6 because we all need to make concessions somewhere. And we managed to find the $500,000. And then we also actually had a line item which was either program reductions or concessions with our largest teachers association, teachers union. And to the comment that was made earlier about the work done over the summer, I do want to congratulate the school committee, because since the springtime they've been working with the CTA, and you may have read in the newspaper today that on last Wednesday they ratified a new agreement with the Teachers Association that actually brought deferrals for this budget and a savings of upwards of $800,000, a wage freeze for next year, so that's going to substantially improve our financial condition next year, because they had been previously negotiated a 2.5% increase in the salary line item, and then a small increase in the third year. It's really important, as I said, that we have your confidence that we're good custodians of the resources that you're giving us. We certainly solicit your feedback, and I think it's important to note that, we're going into the FY11 budget, and right now we're at the level of the 2007-2008 budget overall. So if you were to look at that budget and you didn't have a name on it, a title on it, the numbers look identical. So in terms of holding down costs, I'm not saying they haven't gone up during that time, but those items I shared with you, those big celebrations, are happening within that cost containment. And we understand the situation this year. And we acknowledge that that's the boundary and the parameters we're going to accept, and we're going to do the best we can with it. We're going to we're hoping to make more progress even within that situation that we have. School committee's committed to that, administration is committed to that, and we hope that you recognize that we're here to be your partner. And if you do have questions, I'm happy to answer them. And I have Mr. Prignano with me tonight also, and I do have some members of the school committee. Other than that,
Okay, I do commend you and the teachers for the work that you've done in reducing expenses.
thank you, President.
That being said, there's always a caveat. We are in very bad times. And concessions versus deferments is always, when are these deferments, when are they deferred to? I mean, sometime down the road, that's going to be paid. I understand they took a wage freeze. That's a good thing. That's realizing the situation we're in. Rather, it's much better to take a wage freeze than for have your colleagues lose their jobs. That's a good thing. But there have been some information at least put out that we can still make more progress. In the times that we're in, I'm concerned when I hear about new positions, possible pay increases for administrators, and other, maybe I'm misinformed, but these are things that, in the situation we're in, we can't have that. Maybe I'm not being specific enough, maybe I don't have that knowledge, but...
Well, I'm more than happy to answer a question, or you can certainly call either the school committee directly or me at any particular time, but
Right.
I'm not, if the only new position that I am aware of, and certainly there was some information in the newspaper about it, was a position that was actually approved in a budget cycle a year ago. That was the district support technician. And the school committee reviewed that in either 2 or 3 subcommittees and approved the hiring of that. I don't want to put words in your mouth if that's the position that you're talking about.
I believe it is.
Okay. I'd be happy to speak further about their
Obviously,
thoughts about that.
We don't have the day-to-day control of the operation of the school department. That's the school committee's responsibility. They made the decision that was something that you needed. But whether, the public perceives it that way is another issue. And I do believe that, I just think we have there's more we need to do. That's basically what I'm saying. I think we're on the right track in terms of trying to cut costs. I think we still have more to do.
While I'm at the podium, if I may, and you brought up the subject matter of jobs, I would like to put on the record, however, that in this budget, we did defund upwards of 30 positions. So those are positions that were taken out of the budget completely. Family consumer science at both middle schools and the high school. That program does not exist anymore. Those 3 positions, which were certified teaching positions, top step, the program was considered not to be 21st century education any longer, and has no longer been included in the budget. I could continue to go through. We reduced non-certified positions as well, from full-time to half-time, even taking some situations where we were so scrupulous as to look and say, well, could someone work .8 instead of 1.0? Because we understand that it's critical that every single, what we call an FTE, full-time equivalent, has merit and also can be, have a rationale created for it. So while I understand that you're bringing up the issue of one single position, which supports somewhere upwards of 900 pieces of hardware at the high school, and also an infrastructure across the district that we paid for, the town paid for with bond funds of close to $2 million, pre-K through 12, and that requires us to think about the integration of technology across all our curricular areas. I think it is balanced by the zero-based budgeting analysis that we did across the entire budget. And I think sometimes that, a little bit of a narrow perspective, and I'm happy to explain, so that's why I said you can certainly contact me at any time and allow me to provide that explanation.
Okay,
On your second point, though, that you raised,
I'm sorry?
on the second point that you raised, you asked about a wage increase for administrators. I'm unaware that administrators are going to be provided a wage increase this year. I believe...
I'm talking about last year.
Well, the administrators' salaries are approved by a salary schedule by the school committee that is tied to the top step masters plus 30 teachers' schedule. So if the school committee were to change that policy structure, then the administrative salaries would be revised. That's probably all I have to say about that.
Thank you.
Could I answer any other question?
Thank you, Mr. President. So if I can understand, this correctly, the administrators' pay raises are tied in to the union contract. If the top step goes up, the administrators' salaries go up automatically?
There is a salary schedule. We'd be happy to share it with you. That was
Is
approved
that the
in
process that works?
2008, and it's tied to the top step masters plus 30 teachers. It was designed philosophically to maintain a, distance between the administrators and the folks that they supervise. I'm not sure I'm the one to answer the questions about that, because
Well,
it's not a policy, I'm not the person who sets the policy
Right.
for. Administrators' salaries. So if I could defer that to someone else, or if you would want to come.
That's okay, we can move on from that.
Thank you.
The position that you talked about earlier was very much needed with the IT department.
Thank you.
And that is not the outcry that we're hearing from the town. The outcry that we're hearing from the town, and even supported by your own comments tonight about the limited resources and the tough economic times, is the benefit package that went along with that position. I don't know how we can stand here, and it's only a small, $60,000, but in the philosophy of the problem, and what we heard tonight, I don't know how we can justify that. I can't justify that to anybody that's called and talked to me about it. I spend most of my time making them realize that we don't have control of the day-to-day operations. This is the only time that we have control of the school department's expenditures, is when we go to vote this $35 million in. I'm just not sure how I can support the philosophy that a position from day one gets a benefit package that position gets. And maybe you can explain it to me, how that works.
Well, I don't know if she...
Those decisions are set through school committee policy, through subcommittees. They're analyzing that right now. The administration works with the school committee to do those policy-setting decisions. And I recognize through previous comments that you've made that you were, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but displeased about that, which is why I knew which position you were discussing. But that being said, I think it's, one issue within the context of the larger budget. We're trying to be here tonight to acknowledge the overall picture. We certainly put a budget together last February, which did seek some appropriation from the town, but clearly the budget that's before you is the budget that we accept and that we can work with. And, as the economy changes, which we know that it will because nothing is static, we also know that the the town's support for education will continue. And we also know that any decisions either coming from the mayor's office or from the town council on support of this budget are not indicative of your support of education and public education in Cumberland. Your past decisions supporting our school system have been clearly the direction that shows your support for public education and for the Cumberland schools and for our students and families.
And that's quite the reason why I make these comments, because I do support education in the town of Cumberland, and I do support every dollar possible going to the student, and not going to pay somebody's 4 weeks of vacation time. And if you're not responsible for it, I don't know how the system works then. I mean, somebody's got to be in charge out there that's responsible to take a leadership role. And you can analyze it and go to committee and subcommittee and subcommittee all you want, but somebody's got to take a stand. And somebody's got to put their foot down and say, I'm responsible for this school department, and that's going to change starting now. That's what it takes.
Well, Counselor, I'd
You
be
can-
happy
I'm not done, Superintendent, please.
Okay.
That's why I'm making these issues, because I do support education. And that's why I'm a little concerned that automatically a pay raise goes out if someone negotiates a contract, and then their pay raise is subject to that negotiations where the step automatically goes up. That's why I'm concerned, because I believe the leadership should take the role like the town's leadership has. We can't afford to give raises out to our executive staff for the last 3 years. For the last 3 years, we can't afford to give out raises, but yet we can afford to give out benefit packages like you guys do. It doesn't make sense, and I need to say something because I need to stand up for the municipal side. Enough is enough. We just can't take it anymore. And yes, a $60,000 allotment on a $35 million thing, I know Mr. Pranago will say it's nothing. I understand that. But it's the philosophy and it's the concept of it. And the people in the town of Cumberland aren't taking it anymore. They're tired of it. We hear it out there, and I feel the responsibility to say it from this bench. I understand I don't have control, we don't have control over the day-to-day operations. But by golly, we have the responsibility. We have the responsibility to the taxpayers that when we write a check for $35 million, we should have the ability and we should take the responsibility to ask the questions when needed. And that's it. I mean, that's all I can say. And when there's time to make an amendment, Mr. President, I'd appreciate you let me know.
Thank you, Counselor. I think overall, we are impressed with the efforts that the school administration and the school department has made, and the ones you've referred to, and the achievements you've made on the limited resources you have. I guess for some of us, we could do better, and there are certain pockets of things that, you know, I was there for 7 years. I know how it works, and you know, the delivery system sometimes needs to change. I know status quo is a popular thing in the educational community in terms of personnel, certainly not curriculum and stuff. They're always looking at dynamic changes to make things better. I think that's what the point is. And it's not meant to criticize the overall accomplishments of the school department, but feel free to address anything you wish.
Well, I will, thank you.
Thank you.
There are two things that I heard in the two remarks that were made. I heard the word status quo, and I heard the word leadership. In the first instance, the status quo does not exist in the Cumberland Public Schools and has not existed under my leadership. It is one of the reasons that I often take criticism for my actions. So I believe that we can agree to disagree at times, and we can disagree on individual decisions that are made or recommendations, but I cannot stand here and hear the word status quo used in the same sentence with the types of initiatives that are ongoing in the district that have led to the achievements that I just articulated to you earlier tonight. And secondly, I heard the word leadership.
And I clearly stated that comment was addressed to the delivery of personnel and administration more than curriculum and instruction. But go ahead, Superintendent.
And then you also said that I could comment on your remarks.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to be as respectful as I can.
Thank you.
I believe Councilor Lemoy's remarks were something to the effect that school leadership should be as aggressive or something along those words as the municipal leadership. And I know, Councilor Lemoy, that you spent a great deal of time reading through the budget narrative and are quite well aware of the initiatives that are ongoing in the school department. I think to hone in on the one single point of disagreement that is around this policy decision that we're trying to address misses the mark that over a long period of time, the school department has made significant changes. What I also think is important to say is, you know, in a bad economy, which is what we're in right now, it heightens people's emotions. It heightens people's concerns, and it also can drive us apart instead of driving us together. We've seen that before. You know, I've often said, you know, let's get the elephant in the room out on the table, let's talk together. I mean, we've actually grown together in many, many, many ways over the past number of years. And so what I would advocate as I step away here is that we don't allow this economy and the money issues to drive us apart, but instead to drive us together, because we do have to find solutions on behalf of the kids in town. We have to find solutions. Thank you.
Yes? Which one?
Just obviously, I understand the frustration on that position, and I didn't...
Hold on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Moore?
And,
Councilor Lemoy, did you have a point?
I just want to make it clear.
I thought I had the floor, Mr.
Hold on.
Chairman.
I'll let you.
Oh, okay.
No, you go.
Mr. Mutter.
Mr. Mutter. Mr. Mutter.
Well, I don't know, who has the floor, Mr. Chairman?
I don't know.
I know you recognized.
You want to make your comment up? Go ahead. You go first, then we'll have Councilor Lemoy respond if he chooses.
Was I recognized? Oh, no. No?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, you were, sir.
No, if I wasn't, I have no problem waiting. That was a majority rule that evening, just like they do up on this dais. Certainly, you know, I had some issues. I think it's problematic that it's still part of the public discussion, to be honest with you. It was a budgeted position. It is only a one-year contract, so that will be up in front of the committee or be part of their purview. Obviously, I think we had an opportunity there to look at how we were going to delineate contracts in the future, so I think we may have lost that. But the other thing is there's a person who has that position now, and I think to bring it up anymore is partially offensive to the person who is doing that job right now. But 6-1 or 5-2, I forget. Anyway, majority did rule that evening. I'm sure all of you have been in a situation where you have lost votes or been in votes that were split votes, and we move on to the next one. Certainly, I do think it is, though I understand the frustration, and I was somewhat frustrated that evening as well, when we had a lot of personnel who were unsure of their positions, and we were adding one. But it is time to move past that one, and I think if you're interested in supporting education, the last thing you'd want to do is to pick one vote and make a reduction based on that one vote in that amount. I think that if you're choosing for some reason to make a reduction, that's certainly within your purview. I would think that we have made some some strides recently, even in the agreement that Dr. Merrill just mentioned, which part of that was to remove an obligation that was in FY12 by paying it up front from some extra fund balance. But it's not perfect, and it's not going to turn overnight. And just like it didn't turn overnight when the town had a deficit, and it took some moves to get into a surplus situation that others didn't feel that they had to follow after they were there. It is a process, and and like I say, it's not going to turn overnight. But I would say, just to be a little bit, respectful of that position is filled, and by a majority rule that was in the budget prior at half the rate, and then approved. You approved the budget last year. When you approved the funding, that position was in there as 50%. I'm quite sure it was in there at 50%. It was in there at 50%. I would have liked to seen some of it done differently as well. I'd ask for your patience in us getting to those matters, and I think that we have done a few things lately that have more than made up for it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I mean, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Councilor Moy.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out that my opening remarks about that position was that the position was needed. This is not about the position. And that's all I wanted to clarify when you started speaking, Committeeman Mutter, that you indicated I had a problem with the position. I don't. I said it was needed at the very beginning, my opening remarks about it. It's needed. If now we're responsible because we approved the budget and it was in there, so we're partly responsible for that position, I find that interesting. But to single out, to say I'm singling out one thing is not accurate. I don't want to sit here tonight. I could be here for another 3 or 4 hours of questions and issues that I've tried to raise with the school department. And I've got a meeting I've been trying to get together now since June 24th, in a list of 7 questions I don't have answers to. And I'm not going to I'm not going to take the time of the whole council for my questions here tonight. So I'm not singling out one item. There are many items that I question. And everybody knows that. It's no secret. But this one issue, and it's not about the position, and it's not about the person. It's about the philosophy of the school department that can give out those types of benefits in this day and age. And I felt it's my responsibility to talk for the municipal side when they can't even get raises. That's my position. It's not against the person, it's not against the position. It's just that philosophy and that attitude, and I felt I needed to say it. And it's not singling out one position. There are many positions that I choose not to bring up tonight because of time factors. And just like to make one other thing clear, I know I said I was going to do something here tonight with a motion to reduce the number, and I will compliment Mr. Mutter for bringing something to light tonight, and that is there is a person in that position, and that reduction would be targeted at that position. So I'll withdraw from that, and if it means me putting my foot in my mouth saying I would do something and now I'm not going to, I'll take that. But it is because of Mr. Mutter's remarks that there is a person in that position, and I respect that person. But it doesn't take away my dislike of the philosophy and the attitude of the benefit packages that roll out of the school department. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mutter. Are there any other people who wish to speak on expenditures? I'm sorry, Lemoy. Councilor Lemoy. How would you like to be addressed from now on? Mr. School Committee Man or Mr. Mutter? Jeff, okay. Thank you, Councilor Lemoy. Any other comments on expenditures? Yes.
Thank you. One of the comments I have is I've been studying this information over the last couple of weeks, and I've been trying to locate the union contract from 2000 that covers the 2009 to 2012 year, and I haven't been able to find a copy. And I was wondering if somebody knew in the room where I could get my hands. I know that's been superseded. There's been amendments ratified. I have copies of those, but I do not have a copy of the union contract.
Do you contact the superintendent's office? I think they have copies of all.
Okay, I asked the chairman of the finance committee of the school committee, and he did not have one, and I asked him where I could get one. He did not know. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I want to make a point relative to the education spending here in the town of Cumberland during the last three fiscal years ended June 30 of '09. These are audited financial statement numbers. These are numbers right out of the town's audited financial statements. Education costs totaled in 2007, $52,800,000. In 2008, those costs... I'm sorry, $52,800,000.
I wish it cost...
In 2008, they increased to $54,800,000. In 2009, they increased to $55,700,000. I think based on the appropriation last year and some numbers that will be matched based on state pension contributions, that number for 2010, I don't know what it is yet. I don't think any of us know yet, but that will probably approximate $56 million. So my point simply is that education, as much as we all appreciate what the fine administration does, and especially the teachers who are working day in and day out, the cost of education in the town of Cumberland has increased over the last several years, okay? I wanted to make that point. I also wanted to make this point about step increases, because I'm learning a little bit about step increases, and we talk about the fact that there's no salary increase, but yet a step 4 teacher last year who was making $46,600, when they show up this year in September, they make $50,100. And to me, if they're doing presumably the same job, I would consider that an increase. Now, in technical terms, I guess it's called a step increase in the labor market, but if you come to work after 12 months and you do the same job and you get about a $3,500 wage increase, I would call that a raise. And I just wanted to try to get an answer as to what the difference is between a step increase of almost $4,000, $3,500 for a teacher here in Cumberland, a step 4 to step 5 teacher who graduates from 4 to 5. In the current fiscal year, they get a $3,500 pay increase, and I would just want to get some explanation as to what that represents.
Well, I don't know that there's a proper forum for that. It's probably more of a school committee issue.
Okay, all right.
But it's a contractual, it's in their contract, it's in every contract, in every school department. In the state of Rhode Island, it's been argued that it's part of state law. We can either agree or disagree. And that's I guess, a structural question in terms of the delivery of education. And it really, a lot of the educational mandates and the laws that surround education come out of the General Assembly.
Go to the school committee to get that.
The contract's
get that
already
answer.
signed though, so you know.
I know that. I was wondering how that worked, where they could ratify an agreement to spend the town's money before you guys ratify the
The
budget.
state has not passed a law requiring us to vote to, I think there was something that was proposed, but I don't know if it passed.
It was Article 22.
Where we have to express an opinion or a vote on it.
For a $42 million contract.
Yeah. I'm sure that the school department will follow the law as it exists if that is the case.
Sure, yeah. Okay, I just thought I could get some clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Yes.
Just a quick
Councilor John.
Thank you, Mr. Landry had asked a question, and everybody was shaking their head yes. So the contract isn't filed, not the school department?
What?
The labor contract with Cumberland Teachers Association is on file and available?
Well, I don't know if the current one is, but they're just renegotiated, but,
Anyone?
yeah.